This week's episode of the Wildcard Podcast is brought to you by last week's episode of the Wildcard Podcast. Previously on the Wildcard Podcast.
While burrowing under the Himalayas.
While circumnavigating the globe.
Roy Harley.
Amelia Earhart.
And Roy motherfucking Harley.
And Fred Noonan.
Crash land in the Arctic.
No, they don't.
Where they have to eat their dead companions to stay alive.
That was a different story, and it was the Andes.
And then an avalanche buried them alive.
That was the Paraguayan rugby team, Ron, not Amelia Earhart.
And Amelia Earhart and Roy Harley rode his motorcycle into infinity out of that mountain.
Not a single thing you just said happened.
They jumped over a crevasse and into the sky.
Well, Amelia flew airplanes, but Roy wasn't there.
When their motorcycle landed, they were greeted by Paraguayan farmers and shepherds and whatnots.
I have nothing to say to this.
They were given soup and taken care of and nurtured until Roy Harley and Amelia Earhart fell in love.
Ron, don't you remember anything in last week's episode? Amelia was an icon. You know what? Apologize to Amelia Earhart.
Roy Harley never apologizes.
Welcome to the Wildcard Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Eaton, and my co-pilots on this journey to wherever are my good friends, Jeff Curtis.
Hello.
And you're walking in the woods. There's no one around and your phone is dead. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot him. Actual cannibal, Ron Blair.
It's true, I'd eat someone.
Running from your life.
Kill him. I wouldn't kill him and eat him, but if they were served to me, I'd
Stab
eat
him with a knife, it's Ron Blair.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Eating
Yeah, if
all
they
the
were processed by
bodies.
someone else, cut into steaks by somebody else, I'd try it.
Look, he isn't dead. Shy surprise. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Do you know that song that I'm referencing?
I love it.
Okay, just
I
making
love
sure.
it. No,
You've seen the video?
absolutely, yes.
The production
Oh,
value?
yes.
Awesome on that. So, speaking of the resident actual cannibal Ron Blair,
Speaking of
it is
awesome.
his duty to tell us every week what this podcast is all about.
This podcast, my friends, is about celebrating the life and works of Judd Hirsch. From his lead roles
Okay.
in Taxi and Dear John, to his Academy Award nomination for Ordinary People, and his marriage to designer Bonnie Sue Chalkin. Judd Hirsch, we salute you.
This being the first and only reference of Judd Hirsch in any of our 59 podcasts, yes, that's what
That's
this
what this
podcast
podcast
is
is
Do you not
about.
respect Judd Hirsch? Is
certainly-
there
I
a lack of respect
respect
to
him.
Judd Hirsch? And
I'm just saying, how can this podcast be about someone we've never once mentioned?
know that I
Have you
do
ever
respect
been
him.
watching a show and he makes a
don't know that I
cameo
respect
and you're
him.
like, look, it's Judd Hirsch.
No.
Jared, you're of that generation. Dear John, that wasn't a thing for you when you were like
I mean, I
10?
know what Dear John letters are, but no.
No, it was a fun show.
No.
It was a lot of fun. You don't know. Yeah. it was
Chime in,
fun.
dickheads. Let us know if Dear John was a fun show.
Dear John and Taxi.
Or if you even remember them.
Alex
Yeah.
Reed. He was in Independence Day.
There you go. That's what I know him from. I know him from
Goldblum's
that,
dad.
and I
Come
know
on.
him from Numbers, the TV show.
You don't get excited
Numbers,
when you go,
the
Judd
TV
Hirsch,
show.
look, it's Jeff Goldblum's dad in Independence Day.
You ever notice the TV show Numbers?
No, I didn't.
Pretty good. It
I've
was like
heard
one of
it's
those
okay.
detective shows, but it was all about like math and how math can be used.
Yeah,
So
I think Mackenzie used to watch
nerd
it.
like me used to really enjoy that.
Yeah,
so,
nerd like Kenzie as well.
So speaking of things, we have a favorite section. We do
Every
that.
day.
It's a
Every
thing
day we do a
Yeah,
favorite.
we come in even when we're not recording.
We wake up and we go,
we
"What's
have
your favorite?"
discussions. We
Jared
Skype each
calls
other.
us every morning
We
and said,
Skype
"What's
at
your favorite?"
We have
6:21
meditation
a.m.
circles
Yep.
Yeah.
to think about what our
Yeah.
favorites are.
So here's
we really
one.
put a lot into this podcast.
I don't know if this is something you guys
I
have
ponder
given
it
much
while I'm
thought
doing
to.
yoga.
Yeah.
Your
yeah,
Bikram
me too.
yoga. Your Bikram yoga.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we like to talk about movies and stories on here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So here's what I want to know. You know, all of us have done theater. All of us have done musicals.
Right.
What are your favorite movies or stories that you think would make a good musical?
Well, I'm always thinking about those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's
Right.
just kind of milieu.
I
right
thought
there.
this might be kind of wheelhousey for us.
Yeah.
Well, at one point I had pondered turning the Mutiny on the Bounty thing that I did the podcast on
that's-
into a
that would be
musical.
a good
I think it's just
Only-
called breadfruit with an exclamation point.
Right.
Only it was
Breadfruit.
so
Yeah.
it was so huge the story that I didn't see how I could do it without having like a trilogy of musicals, which I
Right.
don't know that would sell.
Yeah.
Right now I'm seriously thinking about Amelia Earhart. Quite frankly,
Pretty impressive.
That'd be a neat musical.
pretty impressive.
That's a good period for musicals, that era.
I'm just picturing an entire song about a peach basket.
My peach basket hat.
So
You can take
I
me.
obviously am not someone who's taken a lot of like real life stories and applied it because I don't write musicals. So mine are more like movies and things like
yeah.
that. But and I know some of the ones I think of have there've been talks, but the fact that there isn't a Princess Bride musical yet is an atrocity.
I don't know if it's an atrocity, but it's surprising.
An atrocity.
Every time they take a movie and make it into a musical, whether that musical is good or not, part of me goes, "Oh,
Well, you don't understand. Like
come
in my
on."
musical, Billy Crystal makes a special appearance no matter where it's being performed.
Oh, well, never mind.
Wherever it's being performed,
I can
he's
support
there.
this then. I'm fully behind it.
I'm not sure I want a Princess Bride the musical. The movie's so perfect. Why mess with it?
Because I want to be in it.
Because Jared wants to be.
And there's
do
no
it.
other way for him
Wesley
to
in
for
that.
you-
Of course.
Okay.
What am I gonna? And then another one for me, and this one's already got music because of the amazing soundtrack. But that's "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Yeah, I don't
Oh, yeah,
know.
but that would be a neat musical.
I think so.
That would be a really
and there's
neat
not
musical.
too many fantastical elements that would
Yeah.
be difficult to stage. I wouldn't think it would just be the comedy and the great kind of bluegrassy music.
You know, speaking of the Coen brothers, though, the Hudsucker Proxy would make a great musical as well. That
not
story
familiar with
really,
that one.
oh, it's excellent. It would really lend itself to
Do you just like saying Hudsucker?
I like saying the word Hudsucker, but I'm sincere in my statement that it's a fine film. I also think When Harry Met Sally would make an excellent musical.
That probably would. It's,
Yeah.
it's all
I wouldn't
about
be opposed to that one.
relationships.
That's the whole thing. If you kept the humor and then added music, it'd lend itself well to a musical.
I've never really thought of rom-coms before because I rarely think of rom-coms.
I love rom-coms.
But one of my favorites, and then I could see it possibly working. It would be take some interesting tech. I think.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen What Women Want?
I know.
Really?
I have
Yeah,
not.
I have.
I've seen bits and pieces.
Mel
not the
Gibson.
whole
Really?
thing.
Yeah, Mel Gibson, Helen Hunt. I actually really enjoy that one. Oh gosh, now My Cousin Vinny.
Would that make
Two-
a good
no,
musical?
the two main
Okay.
actors.
Ralph Macchio
No.
and Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci and the
Marissa
girl.
Tomei.
Marissa Tomei. She
Yeah.
was in What Women Want as well. I
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Couldn't come up with her
No,
name.
she's great.
Yeah. Is this all we have to say?
Good night,
I really,
everybody.
I really thought this was
That was
going to
a
be an
great
engaging
episode.
topic.
Right.
Ron doesn't have anything to say about musicals.
I have plenty to say about musicals.
about
Singing in the
Jojo?
Rain should be made into a musical.
It
Easter
is-
Parade should be
Wait a
made into a
second.
musical. Holiday Inn should be
Something
made into a
about
Does the
musical.
music
White
should the Music
Christmas
Man
should
be made into a musical?
No,
hope so.
I don't
Oh,
think it
man.
lends itself
I like
well.
that one.
What about Les Miserables?
I
Does
think-
that should that be a musical?
No music's necessary
It-
for that show.
It might be a big, overblown, pretentious musical. I don't know.
I'll say
But
this though.
We'll see.
Have you seen the movie Les Mis that doesn't have music in it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I have
so
not.
Boring.
There's
Is it?
like
Yeah, I
there's like
figured it would
3
be.
versions of it without the music.
Well, there's a
Liam
new
Neeson's
one
the
with
only one
Tom
I've seen.
Hardy, and that one seems interesting. I guess until I haven't
never
seen
heard
it.
of
So
this.
if I start watching it, I'm sure.
Well, there's a black and white one, then there was one made in the 70s, and then
Yeah.
there's the
Liam
Liam Neeson
Neeson.
one.
That's the one I've seen.
Yeah. And
I
then there's a
couldn't-
new
I couldn't
one.
finish it.
BBC
Oh,
released
okay.
it.
BBC.
Actually, Les Mis is one of my favorite musicals.
Yeah, I knew it was. I
The
was
film
surprised you were
is
going at it.
one of my least favorite musicals, movie-wise.
What about Forrest Gump?
I think that's an excellent. I am shocked.
You had to go
that
there.
is
You
not-
had to go
that's
there.
And
not
the
a
reason I had to go
musical.
there is because it actually also has one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, but I don't think it's a soundtrack that lends itself to being a musical.
I think
I think Forrest Gump, the book and the movie and every video copy of it should be
burned.
burned.
Okay, then let's go this.
Not really. I think
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
enjoy Forrest Gump should be able to own their copy of Forrest Gump and watch it in the privacy of their own home.
I never talk about
Where
it.
it belongs and not talk about it. Not bring it up. Yeah, I did have an idea.
Okay,
and I
well, how
lost
about
it in the
jukebox
Forrest
musicals?
Gumpness.
Have you seen any jukebox musicals you like?
I generally don't like jukebox musicals.
The only one that I've enjoyed is Mackenzie showed me a copy of the Carole King. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Carole
Okay,
King.
that one is actually
was
an
awesome.
amazing musical
Yeah,
because
that was awesome.
they, unlike many jukebox musicals, they don't try to turn her songs into people singing to each other on the stage.
Yeah.
And you've got the show, and then you've got all her songs, but it's the story about how these songs came to be. So it's not really a musical because the story is not told through the music, but the music
Right.
tells the story because it's the story of all these songs and how she became the solo singer that did the amazing
Tapestries and all that, yeah.
album. And so it's a great jukebox musical because it doesn't try to turn the songs into something else.
Did you guys see
I agree with that.
when Foster did All Shook Up with the Elvis musical?
I did.
No, but I've
I
heard
actually
that's
really,
excellent.
really
I've
loved
heard
it.
that.
I did enjoy that one.
It's fun. It's not deep, but it's really fun.
it's not.
I like
And I like the music on that album a lot too.
I like American Idiot. they didn't
I've only heard a
change
couple
the
songs from
arrangements
it.
much.
I haven't seen it.
I've only heard a couple songs.
I
I've never seen
really
on
like
stage.
it. I was a Green Day fan before.
Now, obviously, we know that the track record of these isn't the best.
Right.
But are there any artists you think would make a good one?
Well, I was going to say, I've listened to the first number from Billy Joel's Moving Out, and I was fairly appalled.
Well,
at
that's
the
also
arrangement
my
and the
understanding of that show, and
presentation.
correct me if I'm wrong, Deckheads, but my understanding is it's not exactly a musical.
No.
It's like a dance.
Moving Out is not?
It's a dance
Nah.
show.
It's a
dance
where
show.
Billy Joel music is played.
Yeah,
Ah.
they basically they have a live band playing Billy Joel music, and then Twyla Tharp has choreographed all these dance numbers to all these songs. So it's not really a story as much. I haven't seen it, but it's not really a story as much as it is
Performance.
a performance. It's like a
Concert,
Billy
yeah.
Joel ballet.
Yeah, the first
got
arrangement
he's
was
got
like
such a-
Disney World singers doing the first number,
well.
doing Moving Out, and I didn't like that at all.
I feel like he's got such a catalog of music. You could find things, but it's just about if you pick all your favorites of his and then try to cram them in, it could be tough. But
yeah.
I think Queen
There is
music
actually
could
one.
become great music.
There
Well,
is
I think
one.
Queen music,
And I heard it was interesting, but I think it's called Killer Queen. But it's about I think it's like techno future as a dictatorship, and
I'd buy that.
I think I had a friend who
They'd
saw it
go
in
in that
Vegas.
sci-fi weird
Yeah,
kind of
I had a friend who
direction.
saw it in Vegas, but I've never seen it. Or
There's
heard.
one Sunny Afternoon about Ray Davies, and it has not left the West End. Ray
Who's
Davies
Ray
from the
Davies?
Kinks, the lead singer of the
Okay.
Kinks, him and his brother Dave.
Dave Davies?
Dave Davies, yeah, yeah,
That is something right
an
there.
alliteration name. And I would love to hear or see any of that. I love the Kinks, but from what I understand, it'll never leave the West
Well,
End.
here's the thing. The problem with most jukebox musicals is that the songs weren't written to tell the story of the musical. They were
written to rock songs.
The rock songs they could be other songs, but the songs were written as these independent standalone songs that have their own thing going on. And when you try to string them together and add a story into them, they don't function that way because they were never crafted that way. The best songs there, and the reason that most musical songs don't become radio hits is because they weren't crafted to stand alone. They're crafted as part of this entire story, and that's what I love about musicals. Is you go to this musical, it's got this fantastic music that's telling the story, and it's intertwined with that story in a way that you can't separate it.
Yeah.
Because it's all necessary as part of this greater whole, and where you have the music and the story all telling the same story, and it's all pushing in the same direction, whether it's dramatic or comedic or anything else. It's this
the unity
It's
of
this,
this
it's this unity, and the way that it kind of saturates your entire being, because it's instead of just watching it, the music kind of seeps into you and moves you along with it. So it's this visceral experience where you don't get that from a jukebox musical, because the songs, even when you break them up well, such as in Mamma Mia, they still they don't function as well as part of the musical as they do on their own.
I think I agree with that, except that with the right technology, I think you can make Pink Floyd's The Wall an amazing stage musical, as long as you maintain the spirit of that.
Well, they made it into a movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah, the movie kind of sucked.
You think? Oh no!
Weigh in, Deckheads.
No, absolutely not.
So
That is a fine film. Alan Parker.
And
no,
I would say
That's a
I'm
good
gonna
movie.
deviate from this because I don't sense any agreement coming between you two.
No, you won't.
And
I don't
would
think.
even argue that with a good writer, they could take a catalog and make a good musical. But I would say most often you get someone who's trying to profit off of the name of the artist.
Well, that's
more so
that's
than-
what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, have you seen Across the Universe?
I have not. Oh, the movie I haven't. Oh
Okay.
my God, that sucks.
What is Across the
It's
Universe?
Beatles.
It's Beatles songs.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Again, it's if you could take the songs and rewrite the lyrics so that they fit exactly what's going on, they would work better. But instead, they're trying to write this dialogue and they're trying to create scenes so that this song kind of naturally fits into it, but it doesn't. And so maybe if you're not familiar with the Beatles music, or maybe if you're not familiar with Green Day music, or maybe if you're not familiar with ABBA music and you're only experiencing it for the first time in that experience, maybe it works for you. For someone who knows these songs outside of it, it doesn't blend in a way that I find enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what your expectations are, because it's obviously not going to be the most comprehensive or cohesive story
Right.
between the scenes and the music.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, we're doing this, so let's kind of detour into this song because it kind of fits here. It's
Right.
not as cohesively narrative as a regular musical should be. But I think with Mamma Mia, a lot of people just want to hear the songs they love,
Right?
And
I think
they'll
that's
care a little
probably
bit about the
correct.
story, and they'll care a little bit about the characters because if you have good performers, you'll care a little about them. But it's not that
They'll care a little bit. They're not buying the ticket for
the character
for
development
a good
Yeah.
story.
They're buying
or
the ticket
character
for our
development,
music.
So
Well, and that's
one
why I think
question.
there are artists that I would do that for. I really actually do enjoy the story in All Shook Up. I think it's fun. It's not dramatic.
Yeah.
It's fun, and I think there are things that can be done with that. By the way, I looked it up. It's "We Will Rock You" is the name of the Queen musical.
Oh, I've heard
Well,
of this.
One jukebox musical that I will say that I really enjoy. Music. It's a movie. It's the Moulin Rouge one where they've got all
I didn't
these
care for
different.
that.
Oh, I love
didn't
it.
But
get
they-
that one.
Oh, it's so stylish.
And they're not trapped by doing whole songs. They do parts of songs.
Yeah.
They mash songs
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And
Elephant Love Medley, yeah.
and so they use the songs and they kind of craft the parts of the songs that they're using as they're crafting the story, and so it feels more cohesive whether or not you like the story.
Yeah.
It flows together in a way that I don't feel like they're shoving things together that don't go
Right.
together.
And they weren't limited by only using one artist.
No, they will use all
Yeah,
kinds
They
of
picked
different
whatever
artists.
That's
song
true. It
they
was a
thought
nice
would
mix.
fit the moment.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some really beautiful music. in
One
there.
question: were you a Pink Floyd fan before?
I like The Wall.
Okay, that's all. That's all I wanted to know. If you weren't already a Pink Floyd fan, I would
All
understand.
right,
I'd
so
be
let's
like, oh, I
let's,
can
let's
see
take
what
the
you're
wild
doing.
cards, the 3 wild cards,
Yeah.
and we're gonna pick an artist and make a jukebox musical. Who are we choosing?
Pink Floyd.
No, we're not.
Obviously, we would go with the first musical act that made an entire episode.
Psych.
That's not a
No,
musical. act.
I just went totally lost.
There's only one. I think we've only done
My brain.
one. No, we've done
Eagles?
two. ABBA. The
Oh, the
Eagles. Yeah.
Eagles.
Obviously,
The
it has to
Eagles.
be the Eagles because that's a wild card episode. So.
I don't think their songs would work
You
as
know,
a
honestly,
musical.
I think you're
Honestly,
kinda
though,
right.
I've always felt like Meatloaf's "Bad Out of Hell" could easily be made into a rock opera.
Well, that could easily be made
Yeah.
into because those are
You
rock
could-
opera
you
songs.
guys seen
well,
Tommy?
there's a strain. There's
I
a
have seen
theme
Tommy.
with them.
I saw it twice.
That's.
I saw
didn't like that film.
I saw
I'd
it
like
in
to see the play
previews and I
version.
saw it in after previews. I like the previews
One of
better.
my rival high
Did you,
schools did.
did you like the stage version better than the film?
Well, the stage version is so much better than film. The film
Is a
sucks.
mess. I'll agree with that one. The
I've never
film
seen
is
it.
a
God.
goddamn
I saw it on
awful
stage when I was in
mess.
high
It's
school
terrible.
because there was a high school that did it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, at that time I didn't know much Who music.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the high school that was doing it because they were like a rival of ours. So I was a little biased.
Well,
against
Tommy
it.
was created to have a theme though throughout that
Well,
album.
Tommy
though,
was
I believe.
written as a rock opera
Yeah.
album, but without any idea of ever staging it. They were just
Right.
connecting these songs and the story. So it works better listening to it than it does when you're trying to film these scenes because that's where they got into problem. So when they did the musical on Broadway, they really worked with the story a lot to shape it so that they could use these songs and not have the same problems of missing parts of the story
Right.
that they have in the movie. That's part of the movie problem is they've got these missing chunks they've got these missing holes in it.
Well, it's like this hippie musical where it's like, let's fuck with your
And
head, and
it-
it's not necessary.
Well,
It's a
yeah,
good
let's
story
fuck
on
with your
its
head,
own.
and it's more like a giant video song video
Yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to a movie. It's not really a film as much as it
music
is
video?
a music
Yeah,
video.
that is absolutely true.
Have you guys seen or heard anything from Rock of Ages?
Yeah, I'm familiar with
I didn't
Rock
see
of
the
Ages.
movie when it came out. I've never seen it on stage. But
I
the
like
songs
those
are pretty good.
arrangements.
The
I
songs are
like
pretty
those
fun.
arrangements a lot.
But again, I would have to
they're
kind of
fun.
see how they connect the dots to see if the story kind of flows. But again, they didn't choose just one artist. They kind of just chose an era of music.
Yeah, the '80s hair band, which was good.
Yeah, it seems like that could be-
lends
it
itself.
seems like it would at least be fun to watch.
Yeah.
All right, Deckheads, we would love to hear your thoughts on if there are movies or stories from real life or fiction.
If Pink Floyd The
Yeah,
Wall
if
is
you have a book that
film
you've
at
read
all.
that you should be a musical, let me know. I'm looking for ideas.
Right.
World War
right.
Z
Jeff's
would be a
got
great
it.
musical. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Every time you
be a
say
great
World War
musical.
Z, I think of the Lost City of Z, and it messes
No,
up my
it's different.
head because
Well, I think
like
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter would be a good
pretty
musical,
entertaining, wouldn't it?
except it's been made into a movie. I don't think I could get the rights.
Yeah, I don't think you could, but that was a fun
pretty
film.
entertaining.
It was more fun
I
than
did
I thought
enjoy
it
it.
would be.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot
I read
more
the
than
book,
I thought it would be.
and I like the movie.
Yeah, it was a hoot.
Yeah. How about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Did you ever read that one?
I never read it. I've
Never
seen
read
the
it.
film.
I watched the film.
so
I enjoyed the movie.
The book's so much better even.
Yeah, I've
I'm
heard.
surprised you haven't read that, to be honest.
Nah,
Yeah, everybody
I know.
was reading that when I was in junior high.
Same thing with me. They
Douglas
were reading
Adams.
it when I was in high
That's
school.
when I read it, when I was in junior high. So, we'd love to hear your thoughts on things you think would be great musicals or bands and artists you think would be great.
The Lost City of Z would make a fine musical.
Yeah. So, but where we left off last week on the Wildcard Podcast,
Roy Harley flying over the transatlantic ocean.
we've been reading about Amelia Earhart, hearing some of her amazing quotes, and what an icon she deservedly is. based on
Yeah.
her, and how well spoken
She did a
was,
lot
and
of
how
brave
well-written
things
she was.
for she moved feminism forward.
Yeah, incredibly.
She really
so.
did.
Well, feminism. Well, she was a great voice for feminism, and then she died. So that she was more of an example than she actually lived long.
Well,
she
yes,
didn't live long
yes.
enough to move things forward.
She died at 39. That's what was said. Yeah.
So the last time we were talking about Amelia Earhart, she was crisscrossing her way across Africa.
Yeah, so she was
Africa,
finishing
yeah.
Western Africa,
Right.
Eritrea, and I think
Right.
she was heading.
So she had she had left Assab on June 15th before daybreak, and to get to Assab, she had the day before had flown down the Red Sea, and she was the first person to actually fly across the Red Sea. So this is an Amelia Earhart quote. Flying by foreigners over Arabia is not welcome. In the early stages of planning our trip, our course was advised eliminating the straight trans-Arabian hop between mid-Africa and Karachi. For a time, it seemed I might have to go around north by Cairo and Baghdad, and down through Persia on the normal Europe-Australia air route. That detour would have added perhaps another 2,000 miles of flying and made a considerable jog north of the approximate equatorial route.
We've been talking about how you want to take this simple path around the planet, but especially this time you were so limited by where can I land and refuel.
Yep.
Right.
You have to really take those into consideration.
And what countries will allow me to
Well, that's
land and
especially
refuel.
as I'm thinking you're getting into the Middle East at this moment. What were relationships like at
Well,
that time with these
Well,
countries?
Britain ruled a lot of them, but
That's true.
but there were still internal problems. So, continuing with her quote, finally the authorities relented. They concluded, I believe, that my plane was capable of making the 2,000-mile nonstop flight necessary to carry it from the Red Sea to India, without undue likelihood of forced landing on Arabia's forbidden sands. It was stipulated that we were not to fly over Arabia itself, but along the edge of the sea.
Yeah, and that's a hell of a flight too. Isn't it?
Oh,
From
yeah.
to India.
Oh yeah, it's 1,920 miles.
Africa and
So
India.
they arrived in Karachi at 7:05 p.m. And it took them 13 hours and 10 minutes to get there.
13 hours straight flight, man.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been on a longer flight, but we're talking like 2001.
Yeah.
So it's not even comparable.
and there's no bathroom on this airplane. I don't know what they do when they need to go to the bathroom, but
There's a jar.
They just open a little panel on the
open
floor.
a panel on the floor.
They just let it go.
Okay.
Let it rip.
Yeah.
So they spent 3 days in Karachi doing repairs on the airplane, and she had been smart enough to know that she would probably need repairs in Karachi, and they had mailed spare parts to her
I love the forethought. Yeah.
so that she went to the post office while in Karachi and retrieved her spare parts,
As one does.
as one does.
When's the last time you went to a post office?
I've been to the post office here probably 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, okay.
It's probably been 10 years since I've been to the
Yeah.
post office.
I had to buy stamps sometimes. And
Well, you can buy stamps at Walgreens, but sometimes I need to mail something, a package or something at the post office.
just so the listeners are aware, Ron has rallies now, so we're eating rallies.
I have rallies, and Jeff brought us a pita with sausage in it. Now Jared has.
So
has
I'm the
tried
only
that.
one not chomping away while
Do you
this
want one of my
podcast.
mushroom Swiss
Oh,
have
potatoes?
no,
important
thank
things to
you.
do. Ron and I aren't
I
necessarily.
need my
Right.
mouth open and not chewing while I'm talking. Remember,
Well,
I'm the civilized one.
You let me know, and I'll say something. If you need a break, I'll just start
All right.
talking.
All
You're
right.
the civilized one. Ron's the one who eats, and I'm the one who doesn't wear pants.
Right.
Right.
You know,
And
everyone, everyone knows us.
I'm fairly good at talking and eating,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
as we know.
Well, you can do both, whether it's pleasant to anybody
Doesn't
else.
matter.
We don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so when she got to Karachi, this is a quote. So on June 17th, they flew from Karachi to Calcutta.
Wow.
That was only 390 miles.
They're in India now.
They're in India. We had been unable to navigate by railroads heretofore because none were available. When they're looking down, watching the railroads to see where they're at and where they should go. But after reaching central India, there were many. There were also rivers and mountains perfectly mapped and easily identified, which stand out if the visibility is good. Because when they're flying over Africa, they didn't have the roads, they didn't have...
Right.
They didn't have the railroads. They didn't have. It was often just sand, and so when you're looking down on this desert, how can you tell one spotted desert from another spotted desert?
Let me stop you right there. I know you're in the middle of something, but
okay.
I just want to imagine at this time. How long had aviation been a thing? Do you have any idea?
20 years, maybe?
1890s.
Well,
1900s.
It was during
1910s.
World War I is when they started having flying aces. The Wright brothers had invented it, but no, who was doing it?
1910s? I don't know exactly the time period.
Yeah,
I'm really
so imagine
20, 30 years
her flying
at
around the
most.
world. Her flying around the world, and again, it's been done. But how many civilizations are there? They're looking up at this and just astounded,
Exactly.
and wondering what this is that's crossing the over top of them.
Well, yeah, for some of these peoples, it'd be the first time they ever saw a plane.
Yeah, some of them hadn't even seen a car yet.
Right.
Or heard of a plane, which
Right.
would be alarming, I'm
I
sure.
mean, it's going to seem like a mythical creature is passing
Oh.
over you.
Yeah.
That's just something I want to think about because it seems so fascinating.
No, it's very interesting.
Yeah, in her book, she actually talks about that in a number of places. I skipped a lot of those quotes because, we've only got so much time, and
Right.
I don't want this to be a three-parter.
Right.
So continuing on with her quote, but on the day we chose to fly, heavy haze curtailed the view after the sand had blown away. Black eagles came flying out of the sky at 5,000 feet. They soared about us lazily, oblivious to the Electra and giving its pilot some very bad moments. How they managed to miss the plane, I do not know. I had never had such an experience and only hoped the birds along the rest of the route would be more cautious in evading the faster-moving machine. Going into another quote. Green mountains piled up beyond Allahabad, and severe rainstorms over them blocked our way. As I tried going between the two, air currents shot us up 1,000 feet, while I vainly pushed the plane's nose down. Sudden rain engulfed us. After that, I gave the squalls more distance, though the air was very rough for miles around.
I hate driving in the rain.
Yeah,
Oh, I do
much like
too.
Flying?
I hate it.
Oh my god.
And
Now, we have obviously it's a different story because in air you're being thrown by the wind, and on a car it's less effective. But you also have a wet road you're trying to make contact with, so it's both suck. But I can't fathom being pushed up 1,000.
That's it.
So on the 18th, they flew from Calcutta, India to Akia, Burma.
Okay.
When we reached the airport at dawn, and they
Eastern Asia, no?
flew through a monsoon. When we reached
God.
the airport at dawn, nocturnal rains had soaked it. The ground was thoroughly wet, precarious for a takeoff, but meteorologists advised that more rain was coming and that likely we could dodge through the intermittent deluges of the day, but that if we remained at the field, we might become waterlogged beyond us. Or beyond use. It might become waterlogged beyond use. That takeoff was precarious, perhaps as risky as any we had. The plane clung for what seemed like ages to the heavy, sticky soil before the wheels finally lifted, and we cleared with nothing at all to spare the fringe of trees at the aerodrome's edge. Once in the air, the elements grew progressively hostile. The wind, dead ahead, began to whip furiously. Relentless rain pelted us. The monsoon, I find, lets down more liquid per second than I thought could come out of the skies. Everything was obliterated in the deluge, so savage that it beat off patches of paint along the leading edge of my plane's wings. Only a flying submarine could have prospered. It was wetter even than it had been in the deluge of the mid-South Atlantic. The heavens unloosed an almost unbroken wall of water, which would have drowned us had our cockpit not been secure.
I just want to reiterate how well she writes.
Yeah.
Man.
So she had intended to continue on to Rangoon, but because of the monsoon, she was driven back. So instead of getting to Rangoon, they
Rundoon, you said?
yeah, Rangoon.
Rundoon.
No,
Rangoon is
Rangoon.
my favorite kind of crab.
They had to fly back to Akyab.
I was making Peter in the
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Yes, I know.
I only saw that one once.
Backtracking, we headed out to sea, flying just off the surface of the water. We were afraid to come low over land on account of the hills. When it's possible to see a few hundred yards ahead through the driving moisture, the prospect of suddenly encountering hilltops is not a pleasant one.
I mean, honestly, the prospect of suddenly encountering hilltops is never a pleasant one.
No matter where you
Just
are.
walking down the street and the sudden hilltop takes you
Whoa!
out.
By uncanny powers, Fred Noonan managed to navigate us back to the airport without being able to see anything but the waves beneath our plane. His comment was, 2 hours and 6 minutes of going nowhere. For my part, I was glad that our landing gear was retractable, lest it be scraped on the trees or waves. So on
that low.
So Fred Noonan is Amelia Earhart's Roy Harley.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes any sense.
It makes no
Amelia.
sense, but
We've been on the ground for 6 hours.
we finally connected Roy Harley.
It's time to go, my love.
On June 19th.
She wasn't his love.
No, they were both married to other people.
There was love.
There was respect.
They're romantic in Kundun.
No, they're not. On June 19th, they flew to Rangoon 400 miles. They went no further because of the monsoon again.
They were holding hands.
All the next day, June
They needed those
20th,
hands.
they flew back to Bangkok, Siam. Or they flew to Bangkok, Siam, and then to Singapore.
Did they have one night in Bangkok?
No.
Was the
Singapore-
world there?
They didn't even stay in Bangkok one night, so no,
That's
they
a
didn't
shame.
sing.
Now they're in
or play chess while they were there,
Aw,
quite frankly.
that's
Singapore,
horrible.
we're talking like Indonesia, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, like the islands southeast
Yeah.
of Asia
Yeah.
now. Like they're heading back down towards the Australia islands, and
The next day, they left Singapore for Java.
they got some coffee.
Okay. Our course first lay over the open sea, then along the westerly shores of Sumatra.
Java.
Finally, cutting deep across its southeast portion. In the first hour of flying, we crossed the equator for the third time on our air voyage, and definitely passed down under to the netherworld of Australasia. The landscapes of the southern hemisphere were beautiful to look upon, but from a pilot's standpoint, the dense jungles and mangrove swamps fringing the sea were not reassuring as emergency landing places.
And the birds will kill you.
I've seen it.
They landed in.
Yeah,
they
that's
landed
been
in.
there.
They landed in Bandoeg, Bandoeg.
My favorite kind of egg, by the way.
Australian cities are, I mean, Australia in general is just the most ridiculous language.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Bando egg.
They took a sightseeing trip. While they were there, they took a sightseeing trip to a volcano.
Hey!
Yeah.
So they spent a couple of days there doing plane repairs.
They sacrificed Roy Harley into the volcano.
And on June 24th,
He wasn't a virgin.
they
That
flew
wasn't-
to
No, that's true.
Sarabaya, only to return the following day because of mechanical problems.
Goddamn mechanical problems.
I know mechanical problems are
They're
kicking their
unavoidable
butt.
at that time.
Well,
They're
you know,
unavoidable, I have no doubt.
You're taking this plane around the world, you're going to have mechanical problems.
I mean, heck, even now we have mechanical problems. And we're,
Right.
You know, decades later.
Even now that we know what we're doing.
Do we?
No. No. Nobody knows.
At 3:45 a.m., we were warming up the engines at Bandoeng, planning if all went well to fly to Australia. When one instrument refused to function, everyone present turned mechanic and set to work to help.
Now, quick question: the instrument, was it a piccolo or French horn? 'Cause I don't fly without my French horn
It was a harp.
functioning perfectly.
Well, let's see if she says what it was in her quote.
That'd be great.
But it was not until 2 o'clock in the afternoon that the distemper was sufficiently cured to warrant proceeding.
I've had distemper.
I was saying now distemper is on board. My
No,
goodness.
Yeah,
the plane.
I've had that.
The plane apparently had distemper.
There's a vaccine for that.
Well,
After that late start, we reached Sorabaya when the descending sun marked the declining day. In the air and afterward, we found that our mechanical troubles had not been cured. Certain further adjustments of faulty long-distance flying instruments were necessary, and so I had to do one of the most difficult things I had ever done in aviation. Instead of keeping on, I turned back the next day to Bandoeng.
That would be tough for someone who's so
Yeah.
set on their way.
So they stayed in Bandoeng until June 27th, doing repairs, and then they left and flew to Kopang. The field surrounded by a stout stone fence to keep out roaming wild pigs, we found to be a very good natural landing place. There were no facilities except a little shed for storing fuel. Consequently, we had to stake down our Electra and bundle it up for the night with engine and propeller covers. That is an all-important job carefully done. No pilot could sleep peacefully without knowing that his plane was well cared for. Our work much amused the natives from the nearby village. When we had to turn the craft's nose into the wind, all the men willingly and noisily helped us push it as desired. Then they flew to Port Darwin, Australia. That was on the 28th. They left the parachutes to be shipped home because the parachutes would be useless at that point to bailing out over the ocean. If something's wrong with their plane, you're not going to parachute into the ocean.
Maybe you aren't.
Yeah, I will.
Don't doubt me.
And then on June 30th, they flew to Lae, New Guinea. Or Lao, is it Lae? How would you pronounce that?
Lae is what
Lae,
I would
yeah.
say.
I'd say lay.
Okay. This landing field at Lae is one long strip cut out of the jungle, ending abruptly on a cliff at the water's edge.
Great.
It is 3,000 feet long and firm under all conditions. At this point, they had traveled 22,000 miles. They still had 7,000 miles to go before getting back to Oakland. On July 1st, they were grounded because the wind was blowing in the wrong direction for them to take off. I know I said firth. I meant first.
I know what you meant. I just enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed it.
I like watching Jared's
Firth.
face when that happened.
Firth.
You
like
like watching the pain on my face as I don't say anything?
July George Firth.
Yes. So on July 1st, they were grounded because the wind was blowing in the wrong direction for them to be able to take off. And I forgot to mention that while they were stuck in Sorbeo, Earhart had dysentery.
Oh, God.
So
My oxen died fording the river about that same time.
Yeah.
That, my friends, is an Oregon Trail joke.
You're welcome.
all right. The monoplane is weighted with gasoline and oil capacity. So this is while she's in Lae, she's writing, which is the last place that she sent correspondence back from.
Is she heading to Honolulu from there?
From here, she's heading to Howland Island, which is halfway between Lae and Honolulu.
Gotcha.
So the monoplane is weighted with gasoline and oil to capacity. However, a wind blowing the wrong way and threatening clouds conspired to keep her on the ground today. In addition, Fred Noonan has been unable, because of radio difficulties, to set his chronometers. Any lack of knowledge of their fastness and slowness would defeat the accuracy of the celestial navigation. Howland is such a small spot in the Pacific that every aid to locating it must be available. Fred and I have worked very hard in the last 2 days repacking the plane and eliminating everything unessential. We have even discarded as much personal property as we can decently get along without, and henceforth propose to travel lighter than ever. All Fred has is a small tin case in which he picked up in Africa. I noticed it still rattles, so it cannot be packed very full. Okay, so at 10 a.m. on July 22nd, they left Laos and headed to Howland Island, which was 2,556 miles away. And this was the last thing she said before leaving. Not much more than a month ago, I was on the other shore of the Pacific looking westward. This evening, I looked eastward over the Pacific. In those fast-moving days which have intervened, the whole width of the world has passed behind us, except this broad ocean. I shall be glad when we have the hazards of its navigation behind us.
Yeah.
So now we're switching over into what happened
On that
during
fateful
that
trip,
last
yeah.
flight. Okay, so on July 2nd, 1937, Earhart and Noonan took off at midnight from Lae and in their plane, and they intended to land at Howland Island, which is a flat sliver of land, 6,500 feet long and 1,600 feet wide, and only 10 feet high.
I mean, like, that's about the length of the landing strip they just lasted. It's like twice the landing strip. That's how
Exactly.
small this island is.
Right. And it's 2,556 miles away. Around 3 p.m. Lae time, Earhart reported her altitude as 10,000 feet, but that they would reduce altitude due to thick clouds. Around 5 p.m., Earhart reported her altitude at 7,000 feet and speed as 150 knots. Their last known position report was near the Nukumanu Islands, about 800 miles into the flight.
About a third of the way in.
Yeah. During the flight, the plane crossed the international date line, and if they failed to account for the date line, that could have caused an error of 1% or 1 degree or 60-mile position error on their navigation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even just 1% is pretty significant.
Now, the Electra had radio equipment for both communication and navigation, but they failed to establish a two-way communication with the Itasca, which was a ship that the Navy had stationed on Howland Island to send directional finding signals so that they could find the island. And they failed to radio locate Itasca. The plane had a modified Western Electric 13C transmitter, which was a 50-watt transmitter crystal controlled, meaning it could be turned to other frequencies. Meaning it could not be turned to other frequencies. It only had 3 frequencies that it could broadcast on or transmit on.
Specifically for flight.
Well, specifically
or for a situation where you're not needing.
So there's high frequencies, there's low frequencies, and depending on the frequency, it has a different range.
Right.
And the Navy has their frequency. So if you're not on the same frequencies, you're not going to hear each other.
Right. It's intended specifically for SOS and whatnot.
Well, that's for communication too, but
it's not for listening to Benny Goodman.
No. Okay. So the plane also had a Western Electric 20B receiver, which ordinarily the receiver covered 4 high-frequency bands, but it was modified so that it could hear frequencies in the second band that allowed it to receive 500 kilowatts signals, and that was the band that SOSs were sent on. Okay. It is unknown whether the receiver had a beat frequency oscillator that would enable the detection of continuous wave transmissions, such as Morse code and radio location beacons. Mm-hmm. But neither Earhart nor Noonan was capable of using Morse code. They didn't know how to do it. They relied on voice communication. A separate automatic radio direction finder receiver had been installed in the plane in October 1936, but it was removed before the flight to save weight. And now there were problems with the radio detection the RDF equipment during the world flight. During the transatlantic leg of the flight from Brazil to Africa, the RDF equipment did not work. The radio direction finding station at Darwin expected to be in contact with Earhart when she arrived there, but Earhart stated that the RDF was not functioning. The problem was a blown fuse. During a test flight at Leh, Earhart could hear radio signals, but she failed to obtain an RDF bearing. That's what she was talking about earlier when she was talking about radio issues. While apparently near Howland Island, Earhart reported receiving a signal from Itasca, but she was unable to obtain an RFD bearing.
So she got the signal, but she didn't know where it was coming from.
Exactly. At Leh, problems with transmission quality were noticed. Once the flight took off from Leh did not receive radio messages until 4 hours later. Leh's last reception was at 5:18 p.m. and it was a strong signal. Leh received nothing after that. Presumably the plane switched to a different frequency. Itasca heard Earhart, but did not hear her on the same frequency that Leh had been hearing her on.
Oh.
The Itasca was at Howland Island to communicate with Earhart and guide her to the island. The final approach to Howland Island using radio navigation was not successful, obviously. One cause of the possible confusion was that Itasca and Earhart planned their communication schedule using time systems set a half hour apart, with Earhart using Greenwich Civil Time and Itasca under a naval time zone designation. So if their planned communication is a half hour on the wrong time, they're not listening for each other.
Oh, shit.
The Electra expected Itasca to transmit signals that the Electra could use as an RDF beacon. Near Howland, Earhart could hear the transmission from Itasca, but she was unable to determine a minimum, so she could not determine the direction to fly. She was unable to. One theory is that her equipment did not work at the 7,500 kilohertz frequency. When operated above their design frequency, loop antennas, which is what this radio had, lose their directionality.
Oh.
The plane had been equipped to transmit at 500 kilohertz, which we talked about before, that the Itasca could use for radio finding, but some of that equipment had been removed. The equipment originally used a long trailing antenna, so while they were flying, they would send out this long wire at the end of the planes to be able to get those signals. But because it was so big and heavy, they took that antenna off before leaving Leh because of the weight.
So they got rid of all the equipment that probably could have saved them.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
So if nothing else had been done, the plane would have been unable to transmit a signal to Itasca for Itasca to use. There is film evidence from Leh that suggests an antenna mounted underneath the fuselage may have been ripped off the plane during takeoff.
Oh, shit.
So during Earhart's approach to Howland Island, the Itasca received strong and clear transmissions from Earhart, but she was unable to hear voice transmissions from the ship. Signals from the ship would also have been used for the radio direction finding. The first calls were routine reports stating the weather and that it was cloudy and overcast. And they came in at 2:45, just before 5 a.m. on July 2nd. So they came in at 2:45 and then again at 5 a.m. These calls were broken by static, meaning that the plane was still probably a long ways out or some ways out. At 6:14 a.m., another call was received stating the plane was within 200 miles and requested that the ship use its direction finder to provide a bearing for the aircraft. Earhart began whistling into the microphone to provide a continual signal for them to hone in on. It was at this point that the radio operators on the Itasca realized that the RDF system could not tune in the aircraft's 3105 frequency. A similar call asking for bearing was received at 6:45 when Earhart estimated they were 100 miles out. An Itasca radio log at from 7:30 to 7:40 a.m. states, Earhart, our northwest, says running out of gas, only half hour left, can't hear us at all. We hear her and are sending on 3105 ES 500 same time constantly. Another log at 7:42 a.m. states, KHAQQ, that's Earhart, calling Itasca. We must be on you, but cannot see you. But gas is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying at 1,000 feet.
It's low.
Yeah.
So her 758 transmission, she said she couldn't hear the Itasca and asked them to send voice signals so she could find a radio bearing.
Right.
The transmission was reported by the Itasca as the loudest possible signal, meaning they're right on them.
Yeah.
They couldn't send voice frequency, so they sent Morse code. But
which neither of them knew how
to listen, and which didn't give them the ability to lock in on the signal. In her last known transmission at 8:43 a.m., Earhart broadcast, "We are on the line 157-337, which they thought that Howland Island was on. Mm-hmm. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6210 kilowatts. That's the frequency. Wait." However, a few moments later, she was back with a transmission that was logged as questionable. "We are running on line north and south." Earhart's transmission seemed to indicate that she and Noonan believed they had reached Howland's charted position, which was incorrect by 5 nautical miles. The Itasca used her oil-fired boilers to generate smoke as a smoke signal.
Right. Here's where we are over here. Look at us.
But there were scattered clouds in the area around Howland Island, which their reflection on the surface of the water could have looked the same as the island.
Yeah.
Because the island was so short and was so flat. Now, after that, all contact was lost. Attempts were made to reach the plane with both voice and Morse code, but there was nothing. They received nothing back. Operators across the Pacific and the United States claim to have heard signals from the downed plane, although none of those have ever been verified as being true.
Yeah.
Some reports of transmission were later determined to be hoaxes, but others were deemed authentic. But some of them came from planes and ships looking for her.
Like search planes.
Right. Bearings taken by Pan American Airways station suggest signals originating from several locations, including Gardner Island. It was noticed at the time that these signals were from Earhart and Noonan, or is noted. If they were from Earhart and Noonan, they must have been on land with the aircraft, since water would have otherwise shorted out the electrical system.
Right.
Sporadic signals were reported for 4 or 5 days after the disappearance, but none yielded any understandable information. The captain of the USS Colorado later said, "There was no doubt many stations were calling the Earhart plane on the plane's frequency, some by voice, others by signals. All of these added to the confusion and doubtfulness of the authenticity of the reports." All right. So about an hour after the plane disappeared, after they lost contact, they started the search. Sure. And so the Itasca searched north of Howland Island, and the United States Navy sent, over a period of 3 days, sent the available resources that they had in that part of the Pacific out to search in the area around Howland Island. The initial search involved running up the 157-337 line of position, but they found nothing. The Itasca then searched the area in the immediate northeast of the island, corresponding to an area yet wider than the search that was northwest. But they found nothing. Some of the search efforts were directed... so they were searching all over the place. And one of the problems in this area is if the plane sank, the water around these islands is 1,800 feet deep.
Oh, God. They'll never find it.
So, no. So what if it sank? You're not going to see it. Later efforts searched the Phoenix Island, which is where Gardner Island is located. So a week after the disappearance, the naval aircraft from the Colorado flew over several islands in the group, including Gardner Island, which had been uninhabited for 40 years. The subsequent report on Gardner read, "The signs of recent habitation were clearly visible, but repeated circling and zooming failed to elicit any answering wave from possible inhabitants, and it was finally taken for granted that none was there."
So they're searching around this island, expecting that if these people are alive, they're going to come out and like clear the signal.
Right. So they see signs that people have been down there, but no one's coming out running or circling or anything, or waving or sending up smoke. At the western end of the island, a tramp steamer, about 4,000 tons, lay high and almost dry. This was a steamer that like 10 years earlier had run aground on.
Okay, so it could have been people from this boat that had crashed.
Well, but they had been rescued. They hadn't been there, but also this island the English had tried to colonize it 40 years earlier, and so and it had failed because lack of water.
And it could be the people from the boat, people that tried to have it. That could be why there were signs of habitation. It doesn't necessarily mean Amelia and Fred were ever there.
At the western end of the island, I said that. So at the lagoon at Gardner looks sufficiently deep and certainly large enough so that a seaplane or even an airboat could have landed or taken off without difficulty. It is believed that Earhart could have landed her aircraft in this lagoon and swum or waded ashore. So that was all from this report from the plane from the Colorado.
Flew over there.
Yeah. They also found that Gardner's shape and size, as recorded on charts, were wholly inaccurate. Other Navy search efforts were again directed northwest and southwest of Howland Island, based on the possibility that they ditched the aircraft and were afloat in the ocean in a raft or something.
How many uncharted islands would there be in that area at that time?
Well, a lot of the islands have been charted, but there's a lot of little islands that weren't charted, and some of as we've already read, there are some of these islands that were charted in the wrong location.
Yeah.
So the official search efforts lasted until July 19th. So that's
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It cost $4 million, which at the time was the most expensive naval rescue search and rescue effort ever. It involved the U.S. aircraft Lexington, the battleship Colorado, the Itasca, Japanese oceanographic survey vessel Koshu, and the Japanese seaplane Tender Kamoi.
Think about what year this is. 1937.
Yeah.
And the Japanese are helping look for Amelia Earhart.
Right.
This is 2 years before World War II begins.
Wow.
And so they covered a search area of 150,000 square miles. Found nothing. When the search was over, her husband, Putnam, financed a private search by local authorities of the Pacific Islands and waters, and they never found anything either. Back in the United States, Putnam acted as the trustee of Earhart's estate, and he had her, he went to court and had her declared dead so that he could, use her estate resources to look for her. But
after how long? I'm guessing did he do that?
This was a couple of years.
Okay, so he gave it time. It wasn't like an immediate.
She was declared legally dead on January 5th, 1939 is when this happened.
Okay,
Wow.
So it's a year and a half later.
Yeah.
So now now we're going to get into the theories.
Before we do that,
Yes.
we obviously need to have Ron give his theory about what happened.
Okay.
I actually do have a theory about what happened.
Yep.
I like to think that she landed near an uncharted island.
Uh-huh.
Noonan was dead. She was all alone.
Well, you like to think that Noonan was dead.
I don't like to think
what
he's
you
dead,
said.
but I like to think she landed safely on an island.
And then Roy Harley came with a jetpack.
With a motorcycle, right. No,
I like to think she crashed into the ocean and died on impact.
No, I don't want to think that. Come on.
That's
Did Fred suffer?
Why do you want Fred to suffer?
Probably. No, I don't want
What do you have
him to
against
suffer.
Fred
I'm just
Newman?
asking if he suffered.
It seems likely.
Maybe. But I like to think she landed on an island. She's by herself. And then the indigenous tribes see her and they're mystified by her appearance, her civilized appearance. They sort of treat her as a goddess, like the Ewoks treated C-3PO. They're there. They're tribal people on the island. There's islands all full of tribal people that nobody knows about. But back then, they're everywhere. You've seen the movies.
Have I?
No, I guarantee you don't even know they exist, but they do. And she's out there and she becomes sort of ingrained with the tribe. She gives up hope. She's like, this is my new life now. And she makes life better for these tribes people. And that's where she eventually dies in obscurity on this island, having led this full, rich life where she enriched the lives of the tribe people.
Yeah.
That's what I like to think of.
Okay. Well,
that's my theory. It's not as crazy as you fuckers thought, is it?
It's no crazier than a couple I'm going to say.
Can't wait to get to those. She finally ascended to her heavenly throne.
So, the first theory is the crash and sink theory.
That was mine.
Yeah. Right.
She crashed. Hopefully died.
Which is actually the most logical theory.
Hopefully died on impact, so there was no suffering.
Right.
Okay. So the crash and on the crash and sink theory, a navigator and aeronautical engineer, Elgin Long, and his wife Marie K. Long devoted 35 years of research to the crash and sink theory.
I know.
How do you have that much free time?
That's a hobby right there.
They began a lengthy analysis of Earhart's flying during the 1970s. The research included an intricate radio transmission documentation. Safford came to the conclusion poor planning and worse execution were the cause of the crash and the...
What a dick. How dare he?
I mean,
call that poor plan. There was one fatal mistake made. How is that poor planning?
I think the poor planning was getting rid of all the transmission equipment before they left.
That was the poor planning.
That's poor planning.
That and parachutes.
Well, the parachutes wouldn't have done any good. What,
are
they going to parachute into the ocean?
If they floated around for a while, the Navy could have found them or whatnot.
All right.
Yeah.
British aviation historian Roy Nesbitt interpreted evidence in the contemporary account.
Okay.
Roy Nesbitt.
Roy Nesbitt.
You mean Roy motherfucking Nesbitt?
Hello, everyone. I'm Roy motherfucking Nesbitt, and I'm here to blow your mind hole with science.
So anyway, in a contemporary accounts on Putnam's correspondence, he went over these.
Yeah.
He decided that the plane wasn't fully fueled at Leh.
Well, I mean,
she would only take
much or not.
She would only take enough fuel to get there and maybe have an hour or so to look for it because the more weight and
that's what the transmission said.
Yeah,
it was
right.
Like, I've got like a half an hour fuel left.
Yeah.
So also Noonan's. He determined that the flight followed Earhart and Newman's original flight path, studied navigation tables, and thought Noonan may have miscalculated the single line approach intended to hit Howland.
Way to go, Fred.
All right.
He did kind of get her 4/5 the way around the world.
Yeah, well, that's true. But way to go, Fred.
So anyway, that's the theory that's accepted by. They didn't have enough fuel. They couldn't talk to the island. They couldn't find the island, and they ditched they crashed in the ocean.
That's
and
really the most
sunk and died.
logical explanation.
Okay, that's the first hypothesis.
Not the most fun, but it's probably the most.
I just want to
likely
point out that I'm incredibly proud of you, Jeff. You're using the word hypothesis instead of theory, and it could not make me happier because
that
the
would
word
make you happy,
theory
wouldn't it?
is misused so flippin' often.
Like the theory of evolution or the theory
that
of gravity.
that one's appropriate.
Or the theory of everything.
No, I mean like when Ron's like, well, I have a theory about that. No, you don't, Ron.
Yeah,
I do.
don't have a theory.
I have a theory.
That's not how the word theory
tested
works.
it.
No, you haven't.
I've tested it. Therefore, I have a theory.
Anyway, the Gardner Island hypothesis.
That's how it works.
It's not how it works.
That's exactly how it works. What do you know?
The Gardner Island hypothesis assumes that Earhart and Noonan, having not found Howland Island, would not waste time searching for it. Instead, they would turn to the south and look for other islands. The 157-337 radio transmission suggests they flew a course of 157 that would take them past Baker Island. If they missed Baker Island, then sometime later they would fly over the Phoenix Islands, which we talked about, and part of the Republic of Kiribati. Anyway, the Gardner Island hypothesis has the plane says that they made it to Gardner Island and that's where they landed.
Also, or the Banana Republic.
Right.
The Banana Republic, yes. Right. Yes, they have fine clothes there.
Now, as part of this hypothesis, A week after Earhart disappeared, Navy planes from the Colorado, they saw the life, but no one's...
They saw signs of habitation.
Signs of life, habitation, that's right.
Yeah. They saw that people had been there, but not that people were there.
Our friend Amelia fell in love, and they landed on the island and was like, we could live here forever.
Well, they put like
here's
a James
the thing.
Bond ending where there's like...
Her husband, Putnam, actually sent a group... He hired a group of people from other islands to go search the island. They didn't find them. Right. They weren't found there.
Well, they didn't want to be found. They were in the waterfall.
The lagoon.
Yeah, they were hiding.
Now, in October 1937... Eric Bevington and Henry E. Maud visited Gardner with some potential settlers. The group walked all the way around the island, but did not find the plane or other evidence. And subsequently, then they started trying to colonize this island again.
Because it worked so well the first time.
They went looking for Amelia Earhart. They're like, you know what? Let's just live here.
Let's live
No, they were there to settle the island, and she wasn't there.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to settle any islands that Amelia Earhart's not on.
No, I want to be where Amelia is.
Now, in December 1938, laborers who had landed on the island and who were building buildings, they found a skull that was buried on the island.
Could have been anybody.
Right. So this
could have been Gary. I hope
they did some more excavation and they found some more bones and a bottle, a shoe, and a sextant box.
Yeah.
Ooh, a sextant.
That's my favorite box.
Probably from that ship that crashed on the island.
You think?
Most likely.
So on October 23rd, 1940, Gallagher radioed his superiors that he had found a skeleton.
Did he smash the watermelon?
Yep.
Possibly that of a woman because of the size of the...
knows.
Right. You don't know
So
nothing.
all this stuff was sent off to be to Fiji to be studied.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
And
would have gone with analyzed.
Well, you would have. Is that your hypothesis?
Nope.
That you would have analyzed it?
so
Is that your theory?
Definitely isn't.
Dr. D.W. Hoodless.
Hoodless. Dr. Hoodless.
I always prefer a doctor with a good hood. Just... If he ain't from the hood, then I'm not interested.
D.W. Hoodless examined the bones, took measurements, and wrote a report.
Dr. Doom has a
one
hood.
of my favorite names we've ever had on here.
Yeah, Dr. Hoodless.
He concluded that the person was about 5 feet 5.5 inches tall. And he wrote, "It may be definitely stated that the skeleton is that of a male. Owing to the weather-beaten condition of all the bones, it is impossible to be dogmatic in the regard to the age of the person at the time of death, but I am of the opinion that he was not less than 45 years of age, and probably he was older.
It looked like the skull of Fred Noonan.
Say between 45 and 55.
Sounds pretty dogmatic to me.
Pretty dogmatic. That's my belief.
Come on, Hoodless.
Right. Dr. Hoodless. My theories are correct.
So in 1998, an analysis of the measurement data by forensic anthropologists found instead that the skeleton had belonged to a tall white female of northern ancestry.
So Hoodless knows jack dick about what he's talking about.
Or these people know nothing.
Really?
Or they're not even looking at the same remains.
Jesus, people.
Well, they weren't looking at the same remains because the remains had been burned.
Yeah.
They were studying his measurements and conclusions. Right. And then, in 2015, and then they used pictures of Amelia Earhart and to get her measurements.
Right.
And they concluded that the bones were most likely from Amelia Earhart because
obviously,
case closed.
The measurements of these bones match the measurements from these photos of Amelia Earhart.
That'll work.
Conclusive.
Naked photos or clothed
How did
photos?
she get buried on this island?
What's the margin of error here?
100%.
I don't believe those bullshit people.
Gosh,
the cluster just got more fucked.
Yeah.
In 2015, a review of both analyses
said this was trash.
The most robust scientific analysis and conclusions are those of the original British finding, indicating that the Nicomaro bones belong to a robust middle-aged man, not Amelia Earhart.
They belong to Roy Harley.
That's onto something.
Yeah.
I've always liked that guy.
In 2018, an American anthropologist named Richard Jantz estimated the size of Earhart's skeleton based on the photographs. I was talking about that.
Like the naked photos.
Didn't they know how tall she was? Like, they
they'd
should look at a picture.
It'd be in records. Her measurements, you would think, would be in records.
You would think.
Her pilot's license.
She had a clothing line that she had created
Of course she did. Of course she did.
Is that a joke?
No, that's a reality.
She had a clothing line.
She had created a clothing line for active women.
I would wear that leather hat.
Yep.
Proudly.
I bet one of their most popular
I'm sure that someone took her measurements while she...
They had to have. Somebody had her measurements,
Anyone
but they're just dicking
know
around.
if we could compare her size to these bones? Well, I've got this picture over here.
So...
I could do more research, but... Nah.
What size do you think Amelia Earhart is?
This...
Is she big enough, gal?
I feel like Buffalo Bill shows up on this podcast a lot.
So there's this guy who he's wedded to this idea that she and Noonan landed on Gardner. So he's gone to Gardner Island a number of times, and the settlement, of course, didn't work out because again they still didn't have any water.
I never saw it coming.
Gardner Island.
Never saw that failure coming.
And
So
I also don't trust anyone who's married to an idea.
So exactly.
No.
So he found in one of his trips to this island, he found a piece of an aircraft. He found an aluminum hatch from an aircraft that had rivet holes, and he claims that, looking at pictures of Earhart's plane, that it came off of her plane. Well, other people who have analyzed this piece of aluminum said specifically which kind of plane it came off of. And
Jinkies, Dr. Hoodless.
Almost like we can tell exactly where this is from.
Right.
It came off of it came off of a C-47B.
Well, there you go.
On his next trip, he found a carving in a tree that said Earhart was here with a Z.
Case closed, yeah.
Okay, so let's
Signed by
Earhart.
me, Earhart.
let's go into the Japanese captured her hypothesis.
Oh, okay. Now we're getting into interesting territory.
According to this,
though, it's not ridiculous.
this is according to this hypothesis, when she couldn't find Howland Island, she flew 2,705 miles north
With her half
hour fuel to the Northern Mariana Islands, where she was captured in Saipan by the Japanese, taken to a prisoner of war camp, and tortured.
We're the Maccabees of aviation. We're going to fly 2,000 miles on half an hour of gas.
Yeah, because it makes sense she should be a prisoner of war because she has so much information.
Well,
right.
We're looking to make a woman's line of clothing, and we believe you can help.
We need Amelia Earhart.
Well, one of the things that feeds into this hypothesis
I can't wait to hear this.
is that she was actually a spy for FDR, and so
Damn right
she
she
was flying that way on purpose, and her broadcasts to Howland Island were a decoy, and it would give the Navy an excuse to search Japanese waters.
Oh.
I'll tell you this, though.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a spy, you couldn't do much better than her. As sharp as she
she's
was.
great, yeah. She would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe she was a spy.
And
she wasn't.
the History Channel, remember the Conspiracy Theory Channel?
Yeah,
So the History Channel actually
Monster got her.
did
Absolutely.
they did a program where they showed this picture that was taken by the Japanese in the Mariana Islands that shows white male who looked somewhat like
Fred Noonan
from
they
a
could tell because
distance,
they had a photograph, and they're like, they look like the
and
same
a woman with Amelia Earhart's
peach basket
hairstyle, but her back to the camera on this dock near a Japanese that had Japanese soldiers on it and other Japanese people, Japanese ships in the harbor, and they say, well, that's proof that she was conclusive proof.
She settled here with our people.
Then a Japanese student went and looked at archives, and he found that the photo was taken in 1935, 2 years before she even disappeared.
What was she doing in Japan then?
Right. She was a spy.
Oh my goodness.
So
I've only had two. So we're in the school year now.
Yeah.
And I've only had 2 days of students, and I've already been asked 2 or 3 different times about the flat Earth theory.
Oh,
man.
And other, because these kids, that's what they love conspiracy theories.
Are they curious or are they subscribing to that?
Oh, there are some who subscribe.
To the flat Earth theory.
Because they're rebels. And they just want to reject any authority that is,
God damn it.
Pushed upon them.
That just
But they love these,
me.
they find this minuscule evidence, and they're like, well, I believe this. But then when you propose all these other things, they're like, no, I disagree.
Right, when you give them 100%
because they don't actually believe it, they're just saying it to be a nuisance.
Contrary, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, fuck you people. Oh, I shouldn't say that. They're going to be listening.
All right.
Not these two.
Oh, okay, good. Well, fuck you guys. Sorry.
A 1943 movie, It's a World War II. It was made during World War II, called Flight for Freedom. Is a story of a fictional female aviator, obviously inspired by Earhart, who engages in a spying mission in the Pacific. The movie helped further admit that Earhart was spying on the Japanese in the Pacific at the request of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. By 1949,
Didn't you write a song about that?
Amelia, we're going to need you in the Asian Pacific.
So now there's the Tokyo Rose hypothesis.
Ooh, I'm interested.
The radio broadcaster stole her?
No, here's the rumor.
Okay.
It's a rumor that claimed that Earhart had made propaganda radio broadcasts as one of the many women compelled to serve as Tokyo Rose was investigated closely by George Putnam. That's her husband.
Yeah.
According to several biographies of Earhart, Putnam investigated this rumor personally, but after listening to many recordings of numerous Tokyo Roses, apparently there were many, he did not recognize her voice among them.
Great.
Oh, well, that would make sense. He would know.
All right. There's the New Britain hypothesis.
Yeah.
That she turned her flight back again after she couldn't find Helen and flew 2,200 miles in the opposite direction and landed on New
boy, were
Britain.
her arms tired.
And there are reports that people have seen her or seen the plane, but no one's ever found any evidence on this island. Exactly. Then there's the there's the hypothesis, and I'm skipping over so many details because they're stupid.
Yep.
Mine is not as stupid now as I thought it would be.
No one was stupid.
It's gaining more credibility as we go.
Right.
Here we go. There's the hypothesis that she disappeared on purpose and assumed a different identity.
Oh, her and Fred Noonan.
That's my theory. That's like what I was saying.
Went out together to Pitcairn Islands.
Pitcairn Island. They made babies.
Yep.
Thousands of babies.
With motherfucking Roy Harlan.
Motherfucking Roy Harlan. Roy, what are you doing here? I settled here. Come have some fruit. Some bread fruit.
Okay. So in November 2006, the National Geographic Channel aired episode 2 of the Undiscovered History series about a claim that Earhart survived the world flight, moved to New Jersey, changed her name, remarried, and became Irene Craigmile Bolam.
No, that's not my theory at all.
This claim had originally been raised.
Claims this theory.
Wow.
This claim had originally been raised in the book Amelia Earhart Lives, 1970, by author Joe Class.
Well, Class knows.
Based on the research of Major Joseph Gravis.
Can I poke a hole in the sewer fast?
No, I'm going to poke my own holes. Okay, go ahead.
Why would anyone move to New Jersey?
I don't know.
Proceed.
No idea.
That's all I had to say.
Yeah.
Irene Bolam, who had been a banker in New York during the 1940s, denied being Earhart. She filed a lawsuit requesting $1.5 million in damages and submitted to a lengthy affidavit in which she rebutted the claims.
All right, by the way, I completely changed my mind. This theory is true. No,
It's absolutely.
Why would anyone sue for $1.5 million unless they're trying to make this go away?
Absolutely.
The book's publisher, McGraw-Hill, withdrew the book from the market.
McGraw-Hill published this?
Quick draw McGraw-Hill.
I mean, that's like a textbook publisher.
Absolutely, yeah.
They withdrew the book from the market shortly after it was released because of the lawsuit.
Because it's dumb.
Court records indicate that the company reached an out-of-court settlement with her. Subsequently, Bolam's personal life history was thoroughly documented by researchers, eliminating any possibility that she was Earhart.
FDR gave her a backstory.
Right. It's still a cover-up.
He was a spy.
Kevin Richland, a professional criminal forensic expert hired by National Geographic, studied photographs of both women and cited many measurable facial differences between Earhart and Bolam.
How do you get this as a job? We're people paying you to do stupid stuff.
Right. I want that job, though.
All right, so those are the theories. Do you have a favorite theory that you think is hypotheses?
Yeah.
Those are the hypotheses. Do you have
Mine.
a favorite of which of those that you think actually
mine
happened?
Mine
was
is still my favorite.
My favorite was that the Kraken reached up.
Right. And
Pulled
pulled them.
this guy.
The tentacles
Under-
reached up
yeah.
and pulled them underneath. They now live in Atlantis.
And on Deckheads, we certainly want to hear your theories about how she was a spy for Japan in New Britain.
Right.
Before she transferred back to New Jersey and sued to make sure no one could ever
Changed her
find
name
her.
to Irene. If you were going to change your name, it would not be Irene.
Yeah.
All right,
Eileen, maybe.
Eileen. Come on.
come on, Irene.
Come on, Irene.
Okay, so here's a final quote from
Okay.
Amelia.
Lovely.
Yes, and it's called Courage. Courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace. The soul that knows it not knows no release. From little things, knows not the livid loneliness of fear, nor mountain heights where bitter joy can hear. The sound of wings, how can life grant us boon of living compensate? For dull gray ugliness and pregnant hate, unless we dare the soul's dominion. Each time we make a choice we pay with courage to behold restless stay and count it fair.
Oh,
Interesting.
she's magnificent.
Pretty incredible woman. What
Yeah.
a great story. And I think, you hate hearing that, her life was probably lost in this
Right.
terrible way. But it also, and I'm not saying I don't wish she had lived on.
No, but it's inspiring. Her
But it
story now
inspires,
is
and not only that,
inspiring.
because of her loss and the mystery around it, it draws more people's attention to this story.
Oh,
That's a
absolutely.
great story.
And they get to know about her life, which is an amazing life.
Plus, her
Yeah.
death is not a tragedy. She died doing what she loves.
Yeah.
Well, and
I would rather
something-
die doing what I love than just die.
I feel that she was trying to do something important, and what she had learned going over the 4/5 of the Earth that she
Yeah.
did. Look at how much information she provided to the world,
And what an inspiration,
scientifically
my
and
God.
culturally.
People just gave her planes
Yeah,
because she was that incredible.
because she
woman.
was an amazing person.
She wasn't. I went into this knowing, just basic
She was
things
a
about
pilot.
Amelia Earhart.
She
She
was an
disappeared.
aviatrix.
That's all
And
I know, really.
I came out of the story being just amazed and by her and very inspired. She's an inspiring person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she really is.
Without a doubt.
Her writing, like Jared has said many times, is fantastic.
I mean, the book I was quoting her from was called The Last Flight, but it's one of 4 that she wrote. I would encourage people to go read her books just for the knowledge and just for her personality. Just being with her personality in the books, it's a wonderful experience.
Kids got moxie, chutzpah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I whipped out the Yiddish.
As we're getting ready to draw
You
this
whipped out
episode to a close, I actually want to plug a little something.
Plug it.
Let's do it.
Plug it up, Carrie.
Wait a second. Central Hardin High School is doing Urinetown this fall as their
Yes,
musical.
yes.
And they've just announced what the spring show is going
Oh
to be.
yeah.
They are doing Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
Yes, they are.
But it's not just a Central Hardin production. They're
Right.
opening it to the community, specifically as a partnership with HCP, Hardin County Playhouse. And so if you are interested in possibly doing this as a performance, you will need to get a background check through Hardin County Schools to be eligible to work with children.
Right.
In a
If
setting.
you have nothing to fear, it's
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah, and if you do, then just stay away from the kids anyway.
Exactly.
So, but it's an incredible opportunity for those who maybe were looking for a show to do this year. We're wondering. I think it'll not only be great for people who are looking to do a show, but also for the high school kids to kind of work with adults
Absolutely.
and put on
Absolutely
a
it would.
fantastic show. We'll update when auditions are going to be. It won't be until after the new year, but.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty cool opportunity. Just want to mention that Sarah Dakin just announced that was what she wanted to do.
Oh, I thought auditions were in November, like November 29th.
Could be. That
They
might
are
be
in
happening.
November, yeah.
Well, I didn't actually pay
29th, I'm
attention.
almost
Something like
certain.
that.
Yeah.
I saw
How
the-
are we more informed than the person plugging this? What the H?
Because I didn't look up any details. I just like, hey, this
that's
is
what I saw on
this is
Facebook.
a cool thing that's happening.
The details were on Facebook.
I'm in 2 shows right now and going to be taking speech and debate and helping direct Urinetown.
You don't have
so
to-
that's in November. That's really far away. I don't care.
You don't have to explain yourself to me,
Yep.
pal. I know you're busy.
Yay. Friendship. So we would love to hear your thoughts on movies, musicals, stories that she made in musicals, jukebox musicals, how inspiring Amelia Earhart is.
Judd Hirsch's career.
Whether it was the Kraken
Yeah.
or a Sharknado that took out her plane.
Probably was
Whether
a
you-
Sharknado.
Yeah.
Drowning or fire.
Drowning, fire, sea snakes.
Yeah.
That could have happened.
Which hypothesis do you ascribe to?
Yeah.
I subscribe to the theory
I'll
of
smack you in your dumb
everything.
face. So, on that horrible, horrible note,
Yes.
until next time, stay wild.
Stay wild.
And bite the edge.
Speak